Education, often defined as the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction. However, the more profound definition, the one that we prefer, is an enlightening community experience connecting students with their peers, their teachers, and their community members within the school and beyond. Some yearn to quench a thirst for knowledge. Others simply want a place to go, a place where they feel welcome. Our goal is to provide students with the foundations for academic content and life skills. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. As we learn to teach, we keep this expression close to our hearts. The expert in anything was once a beginner. We start our process with blind eyes and open minds as we learn about the procedures to a unit, objectives, lesson planning, assessments, understanding our students' academics and behaviors. When we are called upon, we get in front of the classroom and attempt our prepared lessons. Before too long, we discover the errors of our ways. Our planned activities are not being received the full participation. The questions we pose aren't being answered by the students. So then comes reflection. What did we do right? What could we do better? How can we tweak this to make this point? Come join us in the process of our discovery. One of my best moments teaching thus far has been when I was teaching the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. I was teaching it to one of my more difficult classes, and it was just one of those days where I just had all eyes and ears. You could just see it. You could just see the information clicking in their heads, specifically with some of the amendments such as search and seizure and the right to a speedy trial, the right to a lawyer, the Miranda rights. They were just so into it, and because I tried to make some of these situations very relevant to my population, and it was something that they just really connected with, and it was literally like life advice for them. It was just really a treat to see, and it was just one of those days where you walk out the building feeling amazing. Brooklyn Park Middle School is actually a very diverse school. The Brooklyn area itself is a very diverse area too. We have about a little over 40% white students, but then we have 38% black students, about 15% Hispanic, and about 10% Asian Pacific Islander and biracial. We have a PVA program at the school, which is a Performing and Visual Arts program. Students come from all over Anne Arundel County to attend and participate in this program. They need to maintain a certain GPA. They can't get any more than 2 C's or else they do get kicked out. So some of these students are very bright. It's primarily female. The school itself is a little over 60% female as a whole, and this is very much due to the PVA program, which has a high female enrollment.
Contextual factors are important because they let you know who your students are. By knowing who your students are, you can create culturally relevant pedagogy and implement this into your classroom. Culturally relevant pedagogy allows your students to learn in a way that's better for them, and at the end of the day, we have to realize that teaching our students in the way that's best for them is our job, is what we're here for. You know, I believe that to teach English, it's a social activity. In order to understand English at the highest level, you have to have discussion with your peers, which is why I'm in favor of a lot of these discussion-based strategies. Teachers have made such a massive impact in my life, and you know, if I can make a quarter of the impact that some of my teachers have had on me, I would consider that an accomplishment in my career. I need a career where I can at least have the opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah, we are currently at North County High School, which is in Glen Burnie, Maryland. It is part of the Anne Arundel County school system. Right now, according to the Maryland State Department of Education report card, there are about 2,200 students. The majority of the students are Caucasian, but the rest are a really awesome mix of different ethnicities. So it's a really big population, a lot of students. The hallways are constantly full, lots going on. We are not a Title I school, but we are what is called a AAA school, which means that we don't get federal funding that Title I schools get, but we get it through the county. Currently, about 48% of our students qualify for free and reduced meals or farms, and then about 10% of the population, or the student requires special ed services. But our mascot here at North County is a knight, and the school's motto is "Together we will stand tall." STAND is an acronym for studious, thoughtful, accountable, noble, and determined. And at the beginning of the year, they started using what's called Knight's Notes as a way of positive reinforcement. So if a student is exemplifying one of those traits that in the acronym STAND, then they are given a Knight's Note and they're put into a drawing to win a prize. So that's a pretty cool reinforcement that they have here. North County also runs on a block schedule, so they have 80 to 90 minute class periods throughout the week, depending on the day, because they have a period of time in the middle of the day called nighttime, where it's like a study hall, and they're able to utilize that for catching up on homework, redoing a quiz, just getting extra help, things like that.
The reason I teach is because I want students to be able to communicate more effectively with each other, and I think sometimes they can get more overwhelmed by all the different types of texts and written material that's out there. And I want them to be able to communicate and talk with one another so that they can become contributing citizens and work with their peers, not just in school but in beyond. I'm a big fan of unit calendars, and I know they're sort of a pain and they can be difficult to puzzle together, but that's the best part of it, is that you're working from forward and you're also backward mapping. So you're looking at where you want to start with students, where you think they are, and where you want them to be, and how you're going to go from A to B, but you're actually doing it backwards. So you're like, okay, in order to do this, they have to learn this, this, and this. And that's one really great thing about unit calendars. They put the lesson objectives, they put the state standards, and they put your lesson activities all in one slot so you can see what kids are doing day to day. And that also works well with pacing because you can move things around more easily because you know what's coming next.
I want to be a teacher to share something with my students that I'm passionate about, but I don't think that it's all about the details. It's not just about content. I want to teach my students how to be successful in life, whether it be social skills, work skills. I want to instill that in them so that they will have a successful career. I think that learning objectives are extremely important, not only for the students, but also for the teacher. So when I make a lesson objective, I know exactly what the students are supposed to get from that day, and if they need to know what they're supposed to get from that day throughout the lesson, they can always reference the objective, and they can do that when they're studying for tests and looking over material, and it's a great way to keep everyone on track in the classroom.
One of my favorite strategies is called the gradual release of responsibility. In this situation, the teacher is the original person that starts the lesson and models the behavior. This type of modeling is called the I do section. In this section, the students watch and can participate if necessary, but typically it's just the teacher or co-teachers if it's in a co-teaching relationship. The next stage is during the we do section of the lesson. During this part, the teacher works one-on-one with a student to walk them through and ensure that they know exactly what's expected of them, the expectations for the activity itself, and the other students can watch that modeling behavior and learn for themselves so they really feel confident moving forward into the you do section. So it's I do, we do, you do. It's a gradual release of responsibility. During the you do section, this is typically independent work, so it's where the students get the opportunity to really dive into the activity, use what they've learned during the modeling opportunities, and take that information and make it their own. So typically you do situations are independent reading, they can be data computation if you're in a science or math course. It's a time for them to take what they've learned and use their metacognition, think about their own thinking, and really understand the material and make sense of the content on their own. The unit calendar is an excellent resource to make sure that all of your content is aligned for each lesson. The unit calendar consists of the state standards and federal standards, a student objective, a list of how the lesson will go, a formative assessment, and then how that aligns with the summative assessment in the future. These unit calendars are built in a way that you can visually see that all of the information is congruent, leads to each other, builds on each other, and definitely meets the standards for each of the state and local curriculums. All of this aligning is essential to make sure the students truly understand the material and that it all is in a sequential way and presented in a way that makes sense to them.
So I want to have the opportunity to make a difference and do something that's important, because I originally was pursuing a career that was just going to make money and not matter to anyone. So I really want to be able to do something for students, and I love working. So instructional decision making. So as a teacher, you really have to make on-the-fly decisions all the time. 'Cause a lot of times you'll implement a lesson and it won't go the way that you want it to. So in my lesson with my students' prior knowledge, when I realized that they didn't have the prior knowledge they needed for the new content, I basically stopped my lesson and pretty much integrated a whole new lesson about what they needed their content knowledge of.
So I have two reasons for teaching. First, I want to make a positive impact on my students the way a lot of teachers in my past did for me. But in terms of my content in English language arts, I really want to prepare students to be responsible and critical 21st century citizens and be able to interact with all the texts that are going to be around them and think critically about everything that they consume. So I think teaching is as much a science as it is an art. I think, there's empiricism to it. You have to look at numbers. You have to understand where students are struggling based on the data that you collect from your assessments. And to know not only where students are struggling, but also where you might be struggling. So for example, during my ITE, my post-test scores went down in one topic in one of my objectives, and I looked back at the test that I had written, and I figured out that perhaps my tests that I wrote were not as strong or as clear as they could have been. So it's all about using the data not just for the sake of SLOs or what have you, but for improving your own practice and improving the way your students learn.
I teach because I want to make sure that students and young adults are taking advantage of opportunities in their lives and in their classrooms as well. Yes, so lesson planning for me is a wonderful process, in that first you have to go find out what the information is that you're learning. So you get your topic of what you're teaching them for that lesson. Then you have to master that lesson by mastering the material first. That way you can translate that and relay that to the students. And then it comes in the play of, once you have all the material, your ideas just flow, and you figure out what kind of activities you might want to do to provide this information, and how you break down your lesson into activities and motivators and things like that to make the lesson fun. And then you put it on the like a PowerPoint or another type of forum where you can organize all your ideas and put it in lesson, make the lesson smooth. And then after you do all that, you get to meet with your mentor teacher, and they kind of help polish up your lesson. So they'll review it with you and then tell you what what's great and what might need to be presented differently.
So the reason that I decided to become a teacher was that it's not only rewarding for me, but it's nice to see students' progress happening almost instantaneously. The reaction on their faces when they do something perfectly or they do better on it is totally worth it. Social studies specifically, I've always been a big history nerd, so being able to take that passion into a classroom and teach students why not only it's fun, but why it's important. That was the main reason I went into it, for both fun and to let people know, why it's important for us to look at history and learn from it and how things have repeated and how we can change that going forward. Okay, so my behavior management strategies were a wide range of things. The most successful for me though was being mobile around the whole classroom, going from like corner to corner, making sure everyone was on task. One of my classes was super talkative because they're all friends. So I don't have a big booming voice, so yelling doesn't work for me. So making sure that I was in each corner constantly asking questions to keep them on track, that was the most successful for me overall.
This is going to sound really cliche probably, but I became a teacher because I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I spent a lot of time in jobs where I just felt like what I was doing wasn't making a difference. And I finally made the decision to make a change and go into something that I really cared about, which was reading and writing. And I thought that I could use these skills that I had to really make someone's life better. And when I thought about teaching, the more and more I thought about teaching and impacting a lot of people in really valuable ways, it just really just felt right. And now that I'm in it and I'm doing it, I feel energized every single day. There's different problems to solve. There's different challenges that we need to come up with solutions for. But when you really make that topic click for a kid or for a group of kids, it just feels so powerful. And I come home every single day after work with so many stories to tell that I never would have had before this, about just how funny and interesting and unique and enthusiastic and encouraging these kids are. And I'm so happy that I made the change. I think it was one of the best decisions I've made in my entire life. So when it comes to instruction, I really start with, what am I trying to teach? And then I ask myself two really important questions to get started. What is going to make this interesting to the students? And how am I going to get them engaged? And I start thinking about that. The interest part is usually pretty tough because a lot of the time you're working with things that, a kid who's 12, 13, in middle school or older in high school, they're not going to pick up on their own. It's something that we're giving them and telling them is important. So we need to really figure out what that is that's important and make it personal. I think that's really the important thing, is making it personal for students. So if you take something like, even with Shakespeare, with Hamlet, if you boil Hamlet down to this is a story about this angsty teenager who's pretty pissed because his mom got remarried. Now you have this really contemporary story that might click with a teenager in 2017. So that's one of the starting places. And then once I have that, I start trying to figure out what's going to engage the students, what's going to make it fun or active, because me standing at the front of a classroom and talking for an hour is not going to keep anyone's attention for 50 minutes. So is there a game, or can we turn this into an art activity, or is there some way to get hands-on and physical with a text? These are the kinds of things that I think make learning really fun and engaging for students when they're in middle school, and that's really my goal. I don't want kids to be bored in my class. I think boredom is the death of learning. So keeping them going, keeping them interested, keeping them engaged, that's where I feel like the sweet spot, and the learning always comes in on the coattails of those two focus pieces.
Teaching is difficult. Teaching is fun. Teaching is invigorating. Teaching is rewarding. Teaching is exhausting. The ultimate aim of education is to ensure the success of students. The future educators here have decided to dedicate their lives to this profession but they do not consider their choice noble. They have chosen to teach not because of their aspirations to be noble or their aspirations to be great, but because of their belief that students can be great. Their methods, content, location, and personalities are all different, but they share one powerful quality: the desire to lead others to be great.
All right, and what is your favorite thing about this class?
You.